Kriv je, da, kriv je. Ratko Mladić osuđen je pravosnažno na doživotnu kaznu zatvora, čime je potvrđena prvostepena presuda. Žalbeno vijeće odbacilo je sve žalbe koje je uputila Mladićeva odbrana. Sve. Kriv je za ubistva, kršenje običaja ratovanja, deportacije, nehumano premještanje stanovništva, terorisanje, napade na civile, genocid u Srebrenici, lista ide i dalje. Mladić, kako ga svi strani mediji nazivaju krvoločnik, nije pokazao ni trunku kajanja za svoja zvjerska nedjela. New York Times je objavio značajno dramatičan i duži prilog o potvrdi prvostepene presude komandiru vojske odgovorne za krvoproliće, koje je rezultiralo najšokantnijim zlodjelima u Evropi poslije Drugog svjetskog rata. Mediji poput AP-a, BBC-a, CNN-a naveli su da će 79-godišnji bivši ratni komandant Vojske Republike Srpske nakon dugogodišnjeg procesa provesti ostatak svog života iza rešetaka. Napominju i da će se misija UN-ovog Međunarodnog suda napokon privesti kraju nakon 25 dugih godina traganja za pravdom. I ono što bi nakon presude Karadžiću i Mladiću trebalo značiti kraj jedne tamne, gnjusne ratne ere, rata koji nikada nije završio, desilo se upravo suprotno. Krvoločnik Ratko Mladić, odgovoran za najteža zlodjela nakon Drugog svjetskog rata, mnogima je heroj. Čak i nakon svih dokaza, slika, videomaterijala, svjedočenja, preko 8.000 nišana u potočarima, 11.000 poginulih u Sarajevu, od čega 1.601 dijete. On je heroj. Ajde da pokušamo zajedno ovako. Oduzmimo vjeru i naciju na trenutak ovog krvoločnika. Šta vidimo? Šta ostavljamo našoj djeci? Plodno tlo za krvoproliće? Da li naša djeca moraju da žive našu sudbinu? Da trebaju da mrze jedne druge? Ograditi se od presuđenih ratnih zločinaca je jedini put da naša djeca ne ginu 10-20 godina od danas. Biće to najbolji poklon kojim možemo podariti. Mir.
I don't think we can fully. I don't think we can put ourselves in their shoes unless we've suffered that way. So I'm not sure that I can really say I understand what they go through. I can only begin to try to appreciate it, and it's awful. It's awful. There is I wouldn't say a saving grace, but there is that they have stuck together, and I know there have been differences, but that they have stuck together. That gives strength. And that's been a good thing.
That's been a good thing. Ratko Mladić is charged with crimes against humanity, genocide, ethnic cleansing, found guilty in the first sentencing, in the second sentencing, Srebrenica massacre, Sarajevo siege, and ethnic expulsion. After Radovan Karadžić, this should be the final verdict, one of the final verdicts in Bosnian war. Will this be a closed page for the people of the Balkans? And why isn't it a closing page of an era, of the war that never has ended? Even there are no shellings or snipers, but the war is still ongoing. When does this era stop?
You know, absent direct action to try to build bridges and to move what was really the peace process in Dayton was really something that just froze and stopped the war. I mean, we all know there have been so many calls over the years for efforts to try to make it stand the test of time. I really don't have an answer, because I don't think there's an easy answer. The only answer I can see as an outsider looking in is that time will heal some of the wounds, but those wounds are there, and I do think that it would be helpful for the international community, whoever that is, that it's busy with so many other issues, should consider what happened in the Balkans, and should consider trying to do more to help. The Dayton Peace Accords were, came after 3 years of in essence, hand-wringing and inaction and a siege of Sarajevo that, in some ways, the UN, by their involvement, controlling Sarajevo airport, were in part complicit, in not ending the siege sooner. The international community should have acted harder and faster and more aggressively to try to undermine all the evil that was happening, and it didn't. And I feel now that the lack of effort, the lack of inertia to try to build more healing and to build across some of those divisions, it isn't there. There are so many things going on in the world. The world is so distracted.
This seems one of the worst times in the world as we see it. Everywhere where we look, there is either genocide, either ethnic cleansing, or expulsion, or racism. I cannot find a place in the world where I could say, hey, this is where I could actually live or spend time in peace. You're right, Nick, you're completely right. The world has gone mad, as we can say. You mentioned lack of international community protection during the war, but there is also lack of international community protection during now, today, what's going on in Bosnia and Herzegovina, when it comes to even the presiding of the presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina that glorifies the genocide, glorifies the war criminals, and continues with that rhetoric. What do we leave to our children if we continue doing this? And how should international community act today if it failed 20, 25 years ago?
The risk is that if the narrative is repeated that brought war before, then if the narrative is repeated in that way, then you run the risk of having a repeat of the conflict. I mean, it's horrible to say, but that's a reality. That's a reality anywhere in the world. I can't answer for why the world doesn't engage more. The international community moves on very quickly. I think the way that, the typical way that the international community tries to deal with, people who are trying to perpetrate dangerous forms of nationalism is to try to find ways to isolate them from political discourse. But it has to come from leadership figures in those countries. And what are the pressures that could be put on them? What are the international obligations that could be put on them? Leaders have a responsibility to lead for the betterment of their people. And if they can put their hands on their hearts and say that leading with ultranationalism is ultimately good for the people, that my estimation would be that they should reconsider those thoughts. But I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer because
it is very difficult. It is very difficult
because it's complicated. I just don't.
It is absolutely complicated. It's something that is wrapped around my mind and the minds of my colleagues as well. The mindset of so many stay unchanged and leaves room for future conflicts. And like I said, leaves room for our children for future conflicts. And I can confidently say there is probably 85%, considering the situation right now, that it will be another conflict in near future. And these are our children, our grandchildren, and there is no answer. Like you said, there is no answer. The political leaders should do better. They should be more responsible. They should be held responsible for their words. Every word publicly spoken is a public word.